My name is Emily Carter, and this is the story of how my ex, Ryan, stole everything from me. My money, my peace, my trust. But what he didn't know was that I'd take it all back, in a way he'd never forget, so sit back and listen closely, because this is how I got my revenge. You ever meet someone who makes you think, maybe this time it's real? That was me. 2 years ago, I was 22, a broke college student in North Carolina, chasing a marketing degree and living off iced coffee and optimism. Then there was Ethan. Tall, confident, the kind of smile that makes you forget every red flag in the world. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my calm in the storm. At least that's what I thought. The first night we met, he stayed up with me until 3 a.m., helping me study for an exam he wasn't even taking. He brought snacks, made me laugh, kissed my forehead when I nearly fell asleep at the keyboard. Every friend I had said, "You're glowing." And honestly, I was. For a while, it felt like we were building a life. Two dreamers scraping by but happy. He'd talk about starting a business after graduation. I'd talk about moving to New York. We had plans. We had hope. Then little cracks began to show. At first, they were so small I could ignore them. He started skipping classes, said he was too tired. Then he'd forget to wash dishes. Laundry piled up. Soon I was working extra shifts just to cover rent, while he spent his days on the couch, controller in hand, eyes glazed over with that blue Xbox light. I told myself it was just stress. College was hard. Life was hard. People go through rough patches, right? But deep down, a whisper kept saying, "This isn't a rough patch. This is who he is." Still, I kept loving him. Kept believing that the man I met, the one who cared, was still in there somewhere. I just had to wait a little longer. Be a little more patient. Work a little harder. Patience turned into exhaustion. Love turned into resentment. And one night, while I was cleaning the apartment at 2 a.m., again, I saw a notification flash across his laptop screen. A message. From someone named Haley. A heart emoji. Then another. And another. That's the moment everything stopped. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the mug I was holding. Every sound in the room vanished. The hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, gone. All I could hear was my heartbeat and the echo of that one word pounding in my skull. Cheating. I wish I could tell you I screamed or cried or threw something dramatic. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen. The kind of quiet where you realize the person you love most just turned into a stranger. And that's how my story begins. Not with a grand betrayal, but with silence. The kind that swallows you whole. Back then, I had no idea that heartbreak would turn me into someone unrecognizable. That pain would become the sharpest weapon I'd ever hold. And that an $8 act of revenge would destroy Ethan's entire life. It's strange how fast things can fall apart. One moment you're laughing in the kitchen, sharing burnt pancakes and inside jokes, and the next, you're standing in the same room wondering when it all stopped feeling like home. That's what living with Ethan became. Every day a little more silence, a little less effort. He stopped waking up early, stopped going to class, stopped caring. I remember coming home from my part-time job at a diner one night. My feet were throbbing, my apron smelled like grease, and I was holding a sack of takeout I bought with my last few dollars. Ethan was sitting exactly where I'd left him that morning, on the couch, in the same hoodie, surrounded by empty cans and glowing screens. "Hey," I said softly, trying to sound gentle. No answer. He didn't even look up. I set the food down. Still nothing. The only thing moving in that room was the flicker of the TV and the reflection of some game menu lighting up his blank face. "Did you at least call about your job today?" I asked. He sighed. Not words, just that long, heavy sigh that feels like a door slamming shut. "Can we not do this right now?" He muttered. And just like that, the argument I'd been avoiding for weeks started without me even saying a thing. I don't know what hurt more, his words or the way he said them. Like I was some stranger nagging him about dishes. I wanted to yell, cry, anything. But instead, I cleaned the table. Like always, that became our routine. Me, exhausted, juggling shifts and classes. Him, sleeping late, scrolling through forums, lost in some virtual world where nothing was his fault. The guy who used to surprise me with coffee and handwritten notes now couldn't even pick up his own laundry. Sometimes I'd watch him from across the room, trying to remember what it felt like when he made me laugh. Trying to remember if it was ever real, but I kept holding on. Because that's what love does to you. It convinces you that if you just love harder, fix more, forgive faster, you can bring someone back from the edge. I told myself, he's just lost. He'll find his way again. But deep down I knew he wasn't lost. He was comfortable. And I was the only one fighting to keep us alive. The nights got longer, the arguments sharper, and one evening, after I spent 10 hours on my feet, I found a notice slipped under our door, eviction warning. I froze. I'd been sending rent payments every month. I knew I had. But when I checked the online portal, half the payments were missing. Short silence. Ethan had been taking the money, using it for other things. I confronted him that night, my voice trembling, holding the notice like it was a weapon. He swore he'd pay me back. He said he was about to land something big. And like a fool, I believed him. Because I wanted to. Days turned into weeks. The distance between us grew so wide I could feel it even in my sleep. We'd lie in the same bed, but I might as well have been lying next to a ghost. Then came the night I'll never forget. The night the silence finally broke. I was studying in the kitchen when his phone buzzed. Twice. Then again. The screen lit up just enough for me to see the name. Haley. The same name from that laptop message weeks before. This time, I didn't freeze. I picked up the phone. And what I saw made my stomach twist. Messages, pictures, plans. They'd been seeing each other for months. I didn't cry right away. I just stared at the words until the lines blurred, until the ache in my chest felt like fire. When he walked through the door that night, smiling like nothing had happened, something inside me snapped. "Who's Haley?" That's all I said. 3 words. His face changed instantly. The fake confidence, the stutter, the guilt that flickered for half a second before he started lying. He said she was a friend. He said I was overreacting. He said so many things, but his eyes, they told the truth. I threw his phone at the wall. The sound was sharp, final, like glass shattering at a funeral. "Get out," I whispered. He tried to apologize, but I was done listening. Done forgiving. Done loving a man who treated me like a placeholder. He left that night. And for the first time in months, the apartment was quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of quiet that sits in your bones and asks, what now? What I didn't know then was that the real betrayal hadn't even started yet. Because the next morning when I checked our bank account, everything was gone. Morning sunlight. It should have felt warm, but that day, it just burned. I remember sitting at the edge of the bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My eyes were swollen from crying, my throat raw from silence. Ethan was gone, his side of the bed empty, sheets twisted, his smell still clinging to the pillow like a ghost that refused to leave. I grabbed my phone, opened our joint account, and froze. My balance read $4.12, that's it. $4.12. 2 weeks earlier, there had been almost $3,600, my savings from working double shifts at the diner. Money I'd saved for rent, tuition, food. Money I thought we were building our life with. But the account history told a different story. Withdrawals, transfers, one after another. Each one signed under his name. The last note said, "To Haley T." I didn't breathe. Didn't move. It was like the world stopped spinning for a full minute. I called him. Once. Twice. No answer. By the fifth call, his phone was off. That's when reality hit me like a freight train. The man I loved, the one I supported, defended, fed, and believed in, had not only cheated. He'd drained every dollar I had, all the late nights, the aching feet, the hours I spent smiling at rude customers just to keep our lights on. Gone. For him. And her. You ever feel rage so deep it feels calm? Like your body goes cold before your mind even catches up? That's what it felt like. No screaming, no crying. Just this terrifying kind of quiet. I stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. Tired eyes, trembling hands, and I realized I wasn't looking at the same girl anymore. The version of me who believed love could fix everything was dead. I don't remember much of that day except packing. I threw his stuff into trash bags. Every shirt, every shoe, every stupid cologne bottle he thought made him special. Gone. Then I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and made a list. How to make him pay, not physically. Not violently. No, I wanted something worse. I wanted him to lose the one thing he valued most, money and reputation. So I started digging. Old messages, emails, bank statements. Turns out Ethan had been borrowing from more than just me. He'd taken loans from his friends, used my name to order credit cards, even scammed his boss by faking medical bills. That was his something big. His get-rich-quick fantasy built on lies. And while he was busy playing games and flirting with Haley, he was also gambling online. Hundreds, then thousands. Gone in seconds. I felt my stomach twist, but then a strange calm settled in. Because I finally understood something. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was about to become his consequence. I started small. Reported the fraud, sent screenshots to the credit companies, his boss, even his mom. Then I tracked down Haley, found her on Instagram. Perfect hair, perfect smile, the kind of girl who posts soft life quotes while living off someone else's money. I didn't message her. Not yet, because I had a better idea. If Ethan loved money more than loyalty, then I'd use his greed to destroy him. That night, as I stared at my empty account, I made myself a promise. I'd earn back every single dollar he stole. But he'd lose something he could never replace, his name, and that was the moment my revenge truly began. I remember that night. The air felt heavy, like even the walls were holding their breath. I sat in my kitchen, light flickering above me, a half-empty mug of coffee growing cold. The clock read 2:47 a.m., and I couldn't stop staring at my laptop screen, at his name. Ethan Rivers, the man who took everything. My time, my love, and now, my money. He had stolen $3,600 of my savings, money I earned through back-breaking double shifts, wiping tables, smiling through exhaustion while he slept till noon, and now he was out there, posting pictures with her, his new girl, bragging about his new TV, his new car, his perfect life. Paid for, with my blood and sweat. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't just heartbroken, I was educated. I'd worked one summer for a debt collection agency. I knew exactly how the system worked and how to break a man without ever touching him. I remembered something my old boss once said. People think revenge means fighting back. Real revenge means patience. So I started to plan. Every breath felt slower, every thought sharper. I wasn't his victim anymore. I was about to become his lesson. I opened my laptop and made a list. Creditors, loan accounts, every financial mistake he'd ever bragged about dodging. Each name, each number, felt like a weapon in my hands. I started making calls. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'd like to make a small payment on behalf of a friend. Michael Rivers." My palms were shaking, but my tone was calm, polite. They couldn't tell me his details. That would be illegal. But they could take money. I sent $1 to the first account, $50 to another, $8.50 in total. The cheapest revenge in history. But the most expensive for him, because what Ethan didn't know was that in the world of debt, a single payment resets the clock. Every debt he thought was about to expire would now live for another 6 years. I gave them his new address, his new phone number, even his parents' contact info, not because I wanted them to call him, but because I knew those addresses would be flagged, traced, and linked to his name again. One by one, the systems would wake up, and the wolves would start circling. After the last payment, I closed my laptop and stared at my reflection in the black screen. I looked different, stronger, colder. My eyes didn't look like a girl's anymore. They looked like someone who'd seen what love could do and decided to become her own justice. The next few weeks, I waited. Every morning, I'd check the forums where he bragged about his success. Every post made me smile because he didn't know what was coming, and then it happened. One night, I saw a post from him, a panicked thread titled, "Can a court really send bailiffs if I don't show up?" That's when I knew. The storm had started. $8.50. That's all it cost me to destroy the man who stole thousands. And the best part? He didn't even know who did it. Not yet. After I flipped the last tiny payment, life didn't explode. It didn't unfurl in fireworks or dramatic phone calls. It slipped back into routine, only everything had changed underneath me, like the floor shifting without anyone noticing. I went to class. I worked shifts. I pretended to laugh at jokes that weren't funny. But at night I checked. I watched the forums. I watched the posts. I read his words like tarot cards, searching for the moment the future would crack open. There's a special kind of torture that comes with waiting. It's not the loud, obvious kind. It's the quiet one that sits in your throat and makes your tongue taste like metal. It's going to bed with your phone on your pillow, waking up twice in the night to scroll, and feeling your chest contract each time you see his name. One morning, a little after sunrise, my phone vibrated with a new thread. Ethan had posted, "New setup is lit, yo. Worth the move." The photo showed a bright TV, a gleaming console, that smug grin I knew too well. I felt bile rise up, a hot, sour taste of everything he'd taken. But then there was an add-on in the comments, a screenshot someone had posted, blurred but official looking, with a date stamp. I stared until the letter swam. County Court Notice, Service of Claim. My heart did something stupid. It soared and dropped at the same time. It was crass and cathartic. I felt ridiculous and triumphant and cold. I didn't respond to his post. I didn't message his friends. I didn't brag. I simply sat very still and felt my hands go numb. You'd think after months of plotting and tiny payments, I'd be prepared for how it felt to watch the world start to turn on him. But the reality is, watching someone unravel is a slow, perverse kind of cinema. At first it's tiny, a missed payment reminder, a curt voicemail from a creditor. Then it grows teeth. I started seeing the signs everywhere. A post from one of his old classmates. "Anyone seen Michael? Bailiff called our landlord." A message from a mutual friend. "He's freaking out, keep an eye." Small things, tossed like pebbles. They built until a wave formed. One afternoon, I was stocking shelves at the store when my manager called me into the back. "Hey, you got a minute?" she asked, and the way she said it felt like the moment before a confession. She slid her phone across the break table. There it was, a video, shaky and loud, of men moving boxes out of a small apartment. A bailiff's uniform. A hand dragging a flat screen toward an unmarked van. I pressed my palm against the cool metal of the phone and felt my breath catch. My hands started to shake in a new way then, not from adrenaline, but from the realization that paper could become a hurricane. Ethan's life, the one he'd built on other people's labor and on my savings, was being dismantled piece by piece. He called me once that week. His voice was thin, a man trying to wear confidence on a holy sweater. "Hey," he said, "can we talk?" I thought about answering. I thought about telling him I'd done it. I thought about saying every cruel thing I'd rehearsed for months. But then I pictured the picture of his face, the bailiff's slow business-like movements, the smallness of his gestures when people take what isn't theirs. So I did what felt sharp and clean. I ignored him. There's a cruelty to silence that I hadn't fully understood until then. Not the cruelness of a scream, but the kind that says, "I am done paying the rent on your lies." Every voicemail he left, pleading, panicked, ridiculous, was a stitch in the tapestry of his undoing. I saved them all. I listened to them once, twice, then deleted them before I could feel anything like mercy. The threads online started to change tone. Where once people admired his pictures and his plays for attention, they began to post warnings. "Dude's got CCJs," someone wrote. "What's a CCJ?" another person asked. I typed it into my notes app just to feel the word under my thumb. County court judgment. A legal scar. A paper that says the court found you responsible. A series of those and your future becomes a smaller place. Harder to rent, harder to work, harder to be trusted with the smallest things. I remember standing on the campus green the day the formalities began to close on him. Students milled around, dogs dragged leashes like taut lines, and a group of kids with coffee cups argued about a professor's exam. I stood there, the sun on my face, and felt a quiet triumph settle in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't righteous. It was necessary. I walked past his building 2 months later, not because I wanted to see the disaster, but because human curiosity is a cheap thrill. There were fewer cars. The mailbox was empty. The welcome mat had been rolled up and tossed to the side. A neighbor said something to me about a clearance sale, about things being sold to satisfy debt. No anger in their voice. Only the brutal normalcy of consequence. When the first bailiff pictures circulated online, him, standing in the doorway while boxes were loaded into and the comments were split between schadenfreude and pity. People love a redemption arc, but they love a spectacular fall more. And in the dark corners of my chest where the wound had been raw and open, I felt the most human thing, a flicker of relief. Relief that justice, however messy, had an audible sound, the thud of a box being carried out, the rattle of a lock being turned. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. Paper had started moving, yes. People were talking. He was panicked. But legal wheels turned slow, and the real ruin, the kind that cements a reputation in dust, had steps we couldn't see yet. I was patient. I watched. I gathered myself. One night as I lay awake, I imagined him, stripped of gadgets, standing on an empty porch, the autumn wind tugging at his jacket. I imagined the look on his face when he finally understood that some things money cannot buy back. Respect, trust, a name unsullied. I imagined Haley leaving, not because she was cruel, but because people don't like to live on other people's leftovers forever. And still, there was a small human ache beneath everything. I didn't want him destroyed beyond repair. I wanted him to pay attention, to learn, to understand the weight of what he'd done. Maybe that's selfish. Maybe that's kind of cruel. Maybe that's everything. The waiting had worked. The first tremors had become a steady, terrifying rhythm. But I had to stay careful. Celebrate too soon and the plan folds itself back together. So I breathed. I lived. I let the law move like a slow animal toward him. Next, the summons arrives. The court date. The choice he makes that will decide everything. Weeks of waiting finally condensed into a single envelope. Not flashy, not cinematic, just cardboard and a stamped notice that looked like any other bureaucratic thing the world throws at you. But to him, to Ethan, it was the beginning of a collapse he thought he'd never feel. He posted about it first like it was a joke. "Lol, court date, whatever. I ain't going," he typed, the arrogance glued to every letter. His thumb-tapping confidence flashed across my screen, and I felt something cold and clear settle under my ribs. That was the moment his hubris became an instrument. I watched him make every mistake people make when they think rules don't apply to them. He ignored the summons. He ignored the letters. His replies to worried friends were jokes, bravado stitched over fear. The hearing day came, and I won't pretend I didn't hope for one thing, that he'd show up, arrogant and defiant, so the whole courtroom could measure him. But he didn't. He listened to bad advice from strangers in comment threads. Someone told him to skip, to ghost it, and the problem would go away. Those strangers did not understand how courts work. They did not understand that absence can be the loudest admission of all. When the default judgment was entered, when the clerk called it, and the papers moved from process to judgment, it felt, to me, like a physical thing. A gavel I'd never hit, a stamp I'd never actually lift with my own hand. But still, the sound registered in me like thunder. He had been found responsible. The paper said so in cold, legal language. And then the bailiffs came. That word, bailiff, used to be a foreign, almost cinematic thing I'd only seen in movies. Now they were in his doorway, practical men with clipboards and plastic gloves, and they moved through his place like harvesters. They took his TV first. He had boasted about that TV for weeks. He had held it like a victory flag. They carried it out. They took the console where he had spent nights obliterating his responsibilities. They boxed his new life and put it on a van. It all looked so small on that truck. The things you thought defined you reduced to cardboard and tape. I didn't go to watch him get emptied out. I didn't need to. I saw the pictures, the shaky videos sent by strangers. But later, when I walked past his block, the place felt liminal. Like a theater after the curtain has fallen and the actors went home. No laughter, no hubbub. Just the echo of a life that had been. He called me. Once. Twice. His voice sounded smaller on the phone than I'd ever heard. He begged, he pleaded. He tried excuses. He tried to be funny. I listened to him like I might listen to a storm, full of noise that I knew I could survive. Then I hung up. I let the call die in the sky. That night, I lay awake and imagined his face the first time a future landlord said no because of a CCJ. I imagined the slow, insidious closing of doors, job interviews where his name made people pause, rental applications returned with a polite refusal stamped across them. It was ugly. It was effective. It was exactly what I had aimed for. But revenge, I learned, is not a clean thing. It stains, it resonates, and it leaves you with a quiet that is not peaceful. It is the sound after the last door slams. As the days unfolded, the unraveling revealed itself in small, humiliating ways. A phone call where a creditor read off a balance he couldn't pay. A friend who stopped returning calls because association had begun to feel risky. The small indignities that compound until a person is not who they were. I heard the story through fragments. A roommate asking him to leave. A landlord listing possessions at a pawn shop. A picture of him sitting on a stoop with bags at his feet. He had always been loud and performative. Now he was a smaller man, quieter, apologetic, overexposed. The night his side chick left, the night the girl with perfect hair and curated smiles walked out, I felt a curious thing. It wasn't joy. It wasn't triumph. It was a light, relenting sensation, like the pressure in your head easing after a fever breaks. People like to reduce revenge to getting even. But what I felt, now that the dust was starting to settle, was something more complicated. It was an odd sense of balance restored, a ledger that seemed to line up in my favor. Still, there were moments when my chest ached and I would think, was this worth it? Especially when I saw him on some forum, older and smaller and writing with a humility that stung. I visited the bank a few times, not to collect my money, but to see the face of the system, to see the way small acts of paper could become storms. I learned that sometimes the law is cold and blind. It doesn't return what was taken. It reshapes the future instead. I had not recovered my $1,000 dreams. I had not replaced every late-night shift's worth of sacrifice. But I had shifted the scale in a way that mattered. Sometimes at night I would find myself rehearsing what I might say if we ever met again. Not to gloat, not to relish, but to explain, to watch whether his eyes would change. Would he understand? Would he feel ashamed? Would he learn? Maybe he would. Maybe he wouldn't. People are complicated like that. They are resilient, or stubborn, or both. The CCJs mounted like unwanted stamps in his file, each one a little more permanent than the last. He found doors closing in ways he hadn't feared. Bank rejections, job background checks that ended with polite refusals, rental applications returned with regret. We ran into each other once. That collision you dread in grocery aisles when you're forced to stand face to face with what you once loved. He looked at me, not with hatred, not with anger, with a kind of raw, muted apology that words couldn't touch. I could see the math of it on his face, the lost money, the lost chance, the dwindling future. Why? He said. 2 letters that asked the universe to justify itself. I wanted to say 1,000 things. I wanted to tell him how my hands ached from working double shifts, how my bank account read like a litany of broken promises. I wanted him to understand that money wasn't the only thing he'd stolen, but I didn't. Instead, I said something short and honest. You made your choices. And I left because staying would have been an indulgence I no longer wanted to buy. He tried to rebuild. He tried temp work. He tried low-paying gigs. He tried to move on. People do. They stitch their clothes back together and keep walking. Sometimes I wanted to reach out, to offer advice, to be the person I had once been for him, a partner. But then I'd remember why I had left, and that memory cooled any impulse of mercy into boundaries. There is a lesson in all of this, but it is not a tidy moral. It's messy and human. It is about dignity and the price of it. Sometimes justice is a thing you have to craft yourself, not in anger, but with clear eyes and a cold ledger. Sometimes revenge is less about breaking someone and more about reclaiming yourself. Months later, life smoothed its edges around me. I slept better. I worked steadier. I made plans that didn't rely on anyone else's unpredictability. The apartment felt like mine again. The dishes stayed clean. The laundry got done. Small things, ordinary things, became proof that I could survive. And yet, every now and then, something would crack and the old ache would surface. A song would play and I'd find my fingers tracing the rim of a coffee cup, remembering him. A thread would pop up on the forum and I'd see his username and feel a flicker of curiosity that was almost tenderness. I had set into motion a chain of events that altered someone's life in a permanent way. That knowledge didn't make me proud or ashamed entirely. It made me complex. I was both survivor and architect, protector of myself, and in a twisted way, teacher to someone who needed a hard lesson. The money was not returned. The number on the bank screen stayed small for months. But I had something else, the knowledge that I had agency, that I had taken the sting of betrayal and shaped it into a force that redirected my life rather than letting it define me. Sometimes people ask, "Would you do it again?" And my answer is complicated. If the choice was between letting someone keep your life or taking back the power, yes, I would. But not for vengeance alone. For preservation. For the fierce, stubborn kind of love you have for yourself. So that's my story. $8.50. The price tag on a lesson he should have learned the hard way. I didn't get my money back. I didn't want him to starve or to be destroyed beyond repair. I wanted him to be visible to the consequences of his choices. There is a soft justice in watching someone confront their reflection without the safety net of borrowed money. There is a harsher side, too. A reminder that sometimes justice is not delivered by courts or gods, but by our own careful, patient action. If you take anything from this, let it be this. Your worth is not defined by how someone else treats your money, your time, or your love. You have the right to protect what is yours. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to walk away and to act to keep yourself whole. If you enjoyed this story, hit like. If you've ever felt betrayed and wanted something to change, tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, stories that hurt and heal and make you think, subscribe and join the channel. This was my revenge. It cost me $8.50, a lot of midnight pacing, and a ledger full of small acts. But it gave me something else, a sense that in a world that sometimes takes and takes, you can still find a way to make right on your own terms. If you liked my story, hit that subscribe button, support Voices of Grace, and join this growing family of powerful stories and real emotions. Your support means the world.